Hey, Sam, can you hear me okay?
How are you, man?
I'm fine. Are you fine?
I'm glorious.
Okay.
Glorious.
I'm glad that you're glorious. I'm glad that you've taken the time, and I'm glad that you've been willing and happily able to reschedule. So thank you for your patience on that.
Hey, let me tell you something. The honor is mine. Anyone who has access to Murph from Impractical Jokers is good with me, man. Good with me.
Well, well, I was name dropping you earlier because our mutual friend Mike Viola gave me the following compliment about you. I said, "Hey, are you still friends with Sam Hollander?" And his quote, lovely human with incredible talent matched only by his game.
By his game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
then
like
I said to Viola, I said, is Sam Hollander the only person who's liked by both Mike Viola and Mike Love? And your name came up because the wife and I went to see the Beach Boys at Carnegie Hall 2 weeks ago, and you got a
I
name check
I
live.
was there. I was there. I was there. It boy, you know, that room was sort of a sonic mess, but
Yes.
there's just that orchestra, it was hard to dial it. The Carnegie Hall was not built for rock shows of this era, you know. So it was tricky, but it was a cool show. Look, I am very team Love. I
Mhm.
have to tell you, I've spent copious amounts of time with that whole camp, and I can't express how incredible they are, like, to me. So but yeah, no, Mike, that's very funny. So how do you know Mike?
So I briefly managed him, and he was at my wedding, which means that it wasn't an acrimonious split. And he's one of my favorite singer songwriters of all time, and it's great to see he's finally getting his due. I think you were one of the first co-writes that he had in that transition into his career.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, we did Brett Dennen together, I think was the first thing possibly. And that was probably probably 8 or 9 years ago at this point. I love Mike. Mike's a total sweetheart. He's a very, very sweet man. Schlesinger was one of my best friends.
Yeah.
So I knew Mike via Adam, and Adam was my guy, but they're both absolutely lovely and brilliant at their craft, and couldn't just very decent guys.
The last time I saw Adam was at a Beach Boys private show that Hanson played in some restaurant with the Beach Boys.
I was there.
Okay, you were there. Okay.
I was there.
So
I
what
brought
else?
Adam. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And nobody would leave the Hanson guys alone, and Adam was just trying to talk to Taylor. And
I remember it really well. Yeah, 100%. And I think Taylor at one point tried to tell somebody, he tried to give a little exposition into who Adam was, and they didn't care. They're just like, yeah, Taylor. Look, the Hanson cult thing is crazy. I mean, they have real fans, it's interesting. They really do have like rabid fans.
well, what everybody, yourself included, has in common, Hanson and Adam from Fountains of Wayne and that scene, and Mike Viola, you all survived major label deals where kind of like the thing that was going to be the big deal that changed your life turned out not to be. And then a couple of years later, the niche audience or running for other artists happened because, just like you, Hanson wrote for the Beach Boys, and Hanson has this great ongoing theater tour for the rest of their lives, almost like the new Beach Boys. So, bringing that to you in the book is kind of like your hits, your misses that turned into hits, the hits that turned into misses. When did you know that you had a book?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, the difference between me and Mike and Hanson and Schlesinger and all those guys is, I think humans want to see them at the front of a stage. That's one of the defining attributes to their art, where I don't know if I ever followed suit. I'm a very specific fella. I'll tell you, the book, it's a really great question, man, because truthfully, I began in 2000 and truthfully, probably the initial sort of outlining in my head was probably 2014. I started just putting down all these little interstitial bits, trying to figure out what they were. But the moment I I think after High Hopes, it became feasible in my head because I felt that I had lasted long enough. And I
Mhm.
felt like at that point I'd finally, I don't know, I felt like there was enough body there to really discuss. And, I never wanted this thing to be a deep dive into success, because success is very boring. I've read very successful people's books and I'm always nauseated. It does nothing for me. I like the warts, and I like, I'm a big fan of the struggle. And my case is just so strange because, once again, there were so many years of futility at the front end of it. And also, and by the way, it's important to note, futility without any critical recognition. There are people who have years and years of futility, but we're in Christgau's, year-end polls. That was not me, man. I was somebody who people thought was sort of inherently whack. So it's fun to just coming out the other side of it. I can look back and laugh at the whole ordeal, but I think it was probably after High Hopes that I felt that maybe this could actually reach people, because the fan base is so broad, specifically on Panic, but also a lot of these songs have enough of a reach that maybe I felt that it might hit multi-generationally and that people could relate more,
Yeah. I became a Sam Hollander fan when I heard you on the I'd Hit That podcast, which, has come and gone a couple of times. We've seen Dave appear and magically disappear and all that. But you were talking about being the vibes guy. That was your role in the songwriting session. I say that because, having spoken with a lot of publishers, they go, what do you do? Top line? Yeah. What do you? Oh, I'm the lyrics guy. I'm the beats guy. And I'd never heard that before. The vibes guy.
Well, on all my songs, I write the lyric and melody, but truthfully, I feel like I have a strange role. There's a duality to it because I began in production, right?
Right.
I did tons of production, but I don't want to produce. So what happens is I'm useful in a room because I really do think I can play the role of grown up, in terms of I'm not particularly greedy. There's no big land grab for me, man. I'm in the room. I'm just psyched to be there. So my energy is really positive, and I think I never take it for granted ever, the fact that I'm still allowed to do this, and that like an 18-year-old kid will let me in the room and let me dance around and, blow a bone in the background and just chill, So I think it's great, and it's conducive to my thing, but it's always been, the top line for me, truthfully. It was always lyric and melody, because that just grew out of my failed rapping, and that's what it is. But it shifts, man. It's like, depending on the hour, there are days where it's complete heavy lifting and other days where I'm literally the therapist and I'm in the room just trying to talk somebody off the ledge. So the creative ledge. So that's it,
Viola has talked to me about that, about how it's easy for him because he's channeling, like, he's not a 25-year-old lady, but he could put himself in the place of that and go, I know what that was like, and kind of channel that way. So when did you kind of realize that you could just draw upon other people's experience, that you didn't have to live all that in present day to be creative, and therefore there's an infinite amount of creativity out there?
Well, in another lifetime, I probably would have been a screenwriter, in terms of, I used to just nerd out on anything Harold Ramis or, I'm a Vera, right? John Hughes, Harold Ramis, I love the notion of just crafting a story for an artist. That's what was sexy to me. I never wanted to pitch songs and just blanketly pitch them, because I felt like there was a disconnect. I wanted to write songs with an artist and shape their narrative and frame it, and I think that was born out of the fact that my artistry was so terrible on my own. I just felt like, once again, there are many screenwriters running around Los Angeles, as who once acted, and they went, wow, you know what, I'm better behind a typewriter. So I think I was the same person. I just never aspired to be an artist. I aspired to be a scribe. And I really just wanted to just craft the movie. And so I think that's what I wanted to do from the inception. The only difference was, how to ascertain it, it was impossible. Because once again, if you have nothing, if you've done nothing of note, if you've done nothing that's critically acclaimed, you know, it becomes about the game. And I would say that I hope that Mike Viola would respect the fact that, you know, yeah, my game was ridiculous in terms of overcoming the general stigma of being terrible. So I hope that I should be recognized for that.
For sure. In your case, and this is a compliment, I look at your success as a Larry David-esque thing, where Larry David was known to be a terrible stand-up comic. And he did really badly writing for SNL. And that show Fridays was not exactly a hit.
I love a Fridays reference. Great. Yeah.
Well, hey, Andy,
I remember these things. I'm of age. I remember these things. Yeah.
But, you know, his success didn't come when he was 20 or 25. His success came in his 30s. And when he, you know, co-created Seinfeld, they were going, oh, you mean the guy who wrote that bad Gilbert Gottfried pilot? Oh, yeah, right. And nowadays, anyone would want to write or work with Larry David because he created Seinfeld. But it took a lot of years of being the guy in the background with the failed out front career. In your case, hey, you had the Jive Records deal and whatnot, but that's like the 25th biggest accomplishment for you at this point.
I would hope 105th, but no, you know, there are many days. It's funny. I'm a big Larry David guy, and I do get his arc. We have similar hairlines, and what New York Jews get New York Jews, the comedy, the self-deprecating, the rest of it. And also, yeah, I have psychotic tendencies, and I feel like you might too. So I feel like we might be wired the same way. I love the way he, I will tell you something funny. At the dawn of Curb, when it first hit, my wife was a screenwriter, and we flew out to LA. She had a meeting, and we were sitting in Santa Monica at some office park, and we're sort of sitting on a bench waiting to go in the building. And Larry David walks towards us, looks at us, and just goes, keeps walking inside the building. And it was the fourth wall just completely just being decimated in front of us. It was so strange and postmodern and weird, and I'll never forget it. I thought, oh, he really is that guy. That's awesome. I love it. So I relate to it on so many levels. It took so long for me, 35, right? It took so long to have success. And what happens is, I think if you do succeed later on, every day is just a little bit, there's more levity. You know what I mean? Like I enjoy every bit of it. It's funny. I have a friend who's an actor, and he said to me recently, he said, I'm watching you on social media with your book. You seem to be enjoying yourself. I said, oh, I am, because truthfully, I remember the other. So every day I am so thankful, and I'm so, it's not lost on me how amazing this is, and I'm going to enjoy every little morsel of it. And that's what I do, and that's how I approach writing. I mean, truthfully, I really do. I mean, if I said to my 16-year-old self writing really bad beat poetry that, I'd hit 50 and I'd still be able to do this competitively, I wouldn't even think that I wouldn't be able to fathom it. So it's the coolest.
The only celebrity that I can think of that made it later in life who was still not happy was Rodney Dangerfield, because wasn't he like 45, 50, and he was, it's funny. Yeah, there was some meme. I posted this meme, and it was all these people who hit it later in life, because I relate to him, and Rodney, of course, to me is the cornerstone. Yeah. Now the funny thing about Rodney is, God, if I could just go back in time and know pre-success Rodney, just to have context, would be the greatest thing in the world, So pre-easy money, like, who was this fella, and no, you got to enjoy it. I mean, God, Phil Galdston had his first hit at 42, Save the Best for Last. And, that's an annuity forever. And, he changed people's lives with that song. And that's why we do it, man. I don't know. It's the greatest. Well, being a creative person who's funny, who has those comedic influences, were you ever trying to get into the game of creating a sitcom?
No, I never wanted. All I've ever wanted to do was write songs. I mean, truthfully, I've never pitched other stuff. I'm not really in that space. I tried. I was a producer on an autograph documentary that came out last year of like people fanboying at conventions around the country of different sort of sports and music and that stuff. And it was my one time trying to produce something. I'll never do that again. So my skill sets are so limited, man. I really, I'm lyrically pretty sharp, and beyond that, I'm just a guy the vibe guy in the room who brings a good energy and is here for all of it. I mean, that's the truth. There's no sitcom in me. Certainly, I don't know. The reality of TV and film is so strange because it's almost like you add another decimal point to the stakes. And so there's so many more layers, and I find it all horrifying. I've always said music is like, in the 80s, we had a smoking section at my high school. Truthfully, a designated smoking section outside that would, kids could smoke in.
Did you go to Stuyvesant Town or?
No, I just spoke there. I'm from originally Mount Kisco, New York, and I went to Fox Lane High School in Westchester. And it was funny because we had the smoking section out back, and that to me is the music industry, right? It's a bunch of heshers outside. It's every kind, at least the industry that I grew up loving. So TV and film is not that. And it's a different animal. So I think I keep my distance. I don't know.
Down to the last two questions here, because, hey, let's face it, you've had to do so many interviews. Nobody, let's just let you be. So
I'm nervous about the future of Impractical Jokers without Joe. I could tell you I'm not, I like the other three guys mightily. And I do think Murph is a very, very clever guy, and I enjoy his work. And I think I'd love to know him, but I would tell you, like, Joe's got a rubbery face, and as a man who has elongated features and sort of like doughy stuff, there's something about the doughy face comedically that is hard to.
Before I ask that question, one time I got super big timed by Joe at a red carpet media thing.
Really?
And, I didn't know if it was the publicist or if it was Joe. I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt to Joe and say it was the publicist.
Dead to me. Oh, Team Murph.
Well, question one is, these days, how much are you writing? How often do you do sessions? Because obviously it's not a need the way that it was 10, 15 years ago.
It's funny. I've obviously pandemic, sort of threw everything for a loop. So I did a bunch of Zoom work, and I did some stuff that I really dug came out of it. There's a couple Tom Morello singles that I really dug, and there was the Weezer single Records, which is really doing well right now.
Yeah.
But in general, I don't know. I'm hyper selective at this point, solely based on just how strange this year is musically, and the industry is so fucked as it is. Like, it's such a weird time. So I don't know. I was able to have a nice sidebar last year because I did this show on NBC called Ordinary Joe that we had one season. It didn't get picked up, but I get to write and produce the songs. And it was great because to be able to do that and write this book and finish the book was magical. Now I'm promoting the book, but I'm booked tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll be writing. I've got an artist coming up, this kid named Isaac Dunbar on RCA, who I really do think is as talented a kid as I've met. And we've been locking in basically every free moment. And I'm going to go pretty aggressively this year. I just think, I don't know. I love it, man. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's the only thing that ever really has spoken to me. And if I'm without it, I don't know what to do with myself. I get very, I spiral a little bit. I need the repetition of it. It sort of just keeps the gears going and I think in some way it aligns everything else in my life. If I'm writing and it's just consistent and I'm hitting 3 or 4 hours a day with somebody, I think I'm infinitely more pleasant to be around. So.
Well, I'm glad there's no end in sight to your creativity, whether it is as an author, a songwriter, etc., not as a sitcom producer. And are you ready for the dumb last question here?
By the way, what's going on that shirt? Is it, I can't tell if it's Squire or Van Halen or
Eddie Van Halen.
Van Halen. Okay, good. Someone just sent me, did you get that on the Instagram, the
Dave Lee Roth soundboard?
Yes.
Well, that is actually where my question was going to come from.
David Coverdale sends me memes.
Coverdale is one of my favorite people to interview because he calls you darling and he says your name every 12 words.
Dude, I've never worked with him. We were paired like during the pandemic on a Zoom. We kicked it. I really enjoyed him. And he just, as we were getting off the phone, he said, "Do you like memes?" I was like, "Sure." Next thing you know, I've covered up blowing up my messages with memes, but pretty funny. He's good. His meme game's pretty strong. Just want to tell you
He's
that.
in the
David,
Reno Lake Tahoe.
yes, he is.
Him, Mike Love.
Mike Love. In Klein Village. Yeah.
Clearwater Revival.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. It's so funny you say that, because the first thing I asked him when he threw down his locale, I said, "You must know Dr. Love, the doctor." So
the Doctor of Love. Well, my last question is about David Lee Roth, because here's the deal.
Jews in sports. Great Jews who rock. Yeah.
Yeah, that is all correct here.
Yeah.
Now, people who lived in New York in specific years, it turns out that everyone, no matter the musical genre they were in, had a night where they were at a club where Roth showed up. They wrote a song with him that he chose not to record and just went in a pile. They were asked to be on his radio show or anything like that. Were you, in your New York heyday, ever in the company of David Lee Roth?
I have to tell you something. I sold him the nickel bag in Washington Square Park that he got pinched for, and it was weird for both of us. No, I was never in his orbit. To be honest with you, I've never met him. But I would say it's probably due to the fact that I think I was so low in the pecking order of the industry at that point that I didn't get David Lee Roth. I got, David Lee Stein, who was a Garmento, who was making, writing folk songs at night, who asked me to collaborate. But no, I've never, ever, I never made the cut with those guys, and it would have been pretty cool. It would have been really cool. I heard he's coming back. He might do a residency in the city. I've heard rumors there might be a residency here, and that would be really great. I don't know if that's true, but people keep telling me, "Oh, David Lee Roth's going to come to New York." I think that'd be cool.
Paltrocast.